Well, while we're all paying attention to coronavirus, the Republicans and specifically Republican judges, and yes, they are Republicans, even though it's, I just call them balls and strikes, are busy trying to take away our rights. So we're bringing in Jay Willis to talk about that. He's a senior contributor at The Appeal, and he's written about this recently. Jay, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem, brother. All right, so Jay, let's talk Wisconsin first. What are the courts doing there to? I don't know if it's used this as an opportunity, but certainly they've had rulings here that could affect our rights.
Yeah, well, they had a tricky problem early last month when the Democratic primary, regularly scheduled, was set to be on April 7th. And of course, we're in the middle of a nationwide pandemic, and the state was in the middle of a mandatory stay-at-home order. So there were a couple different responses that they rolled out to try and prevent people from having to turn out en masse in order to participate in democracy. So first, you had the state's governor, Tony Evers. He issued an executive order postponing in-person voting until June, I believe, and in the meantime, allowing people sort of expanding absentee ballots. He said, we'll keep sending out absentee ballots, and you can keep voting that way from the safety of your home. Separately, there was a federal district court judge who issued an order giving folks a couple more days to send in their absentee ballots. They did so because, as you might expect, state officials were so overwhelmed by demand for absentee ballots that they didn't get a lot of them out on time. So you had voters on election day who didn't yet have their absentee ballots. But the day before the election, you had two conservative courts helicopter in and throw out both of these responses. So first was the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which ruled that Evers didn't have the authority to postpone in-person voting. A couple hours later, the U.S. Supreme Court said also that, again, the very modest amendment here of giving voters a couple extra days to mail in their ballots was also not permissible. And sort of a fun fact is they based their ruling on a 2006 decision, which says that lower federal courts should ordinarily not interfere with an election on the eve of an election. I don't know about you, but I don't see a whole lot around me that qualifies as ordinary right now. But that's the justification they offered. And by doing so, the court's conservatives more or less ruled that qualifier right out of it. And the upshot of this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so look, you went to Harvard Law School. You cover this for a living. There's this fiction that the judges and the justices don't take politics into account. Now, that's absurd. Gore v. Bush absolutely shattered that, if anyone believed it in the first place, and then it's been 20 years since then, and this happens all the time. So do you think that if Bush then delays the election, the Supreme Court that ruled that you cannot delay elections would turn around in 6 months and say, of course you can delay elections, God bless President Trump?
I mean, I agree with you. Like, there is no sense anymore in which we have these reactionary courts, especially those, especially run by Trump-appointed judges, who are operating above the political fray. Like, there is this traditional conception that, you get taught in 8th grade civics, that judges are just interpreting the law. As you alluded to, Chief Justice Roberts said, they call balls and strikes, right? But it's not less political to interpret law than it is to make law as a legislator or to enforce the law as an executive. And what we've seen here is courts sort of abuse that tradition, conservative courts abuse that traditional conception to further conservative ideology and promote Republican politics. The days of having a Supreme Court justice appointed who diverges from the sort of political beliefs of his or her appointing president, those are over. The justices that are appointed by Democratic presidents tend to take liberal positions, and the justices appointed by Republican presidents toe the conservative line. The more political an issue, the more predictable sort of those traditional party splits are going to become.
Yeah. In Wisconsin and throughout the country, it just happened to be the case in Wisconsin. The Republicans don't want more people voting. So I get, look, we know this. We've covered this on the show many times. And even Donald Trump, because he's so unsophisticated, just blurted out, we can't allow mail-in voting because then Republicans will never win another election. So we know that Republican politicians believe that. And like I said, Trump just said it out loud. He's amazing. But how do the judges live with themselves? I know this is more of a philosophical question, but is your sense that the conservative judges really believe that nonsense where they twist the law into saying, no, I mean, less votes is good. Of course. We shouldn't have mail-in voting because I'm neutral. No, it's just my interpretation of law. Or do you think they're like, yeah, I don't want Democrats winning. I don't care what the law is. I'm going to twist it in any direction I like to make sure that less people vote.
I do think that's subconsciously part of this, is they are out to protect the Republican Party and, again, promote conservative ideology. And in Wisconsin, the way to do that is to handpick the electorate. The statistics from 2018 in Wisconsin are astonishing. Gerrymandering there has functionally destroyed representative democracy. I believe it's something like 200,000 Democratic candidates for the state house received 200,000 more votes in 2018 across the state, and yet received 27 fewer seats in the state house. That's not democracy in any fair sense of the word, I don't think. But when you have judges who are willing to take this strictly formalist approach and just say that they're applying rules instead of thinking about the real world consequences, this is what you get. I will note that both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Wisconsin Supreme Court took great care in their opinions to say, we are not passing judgment on the policy, the wisdom of holding an election. But the law simply says that we can't allow this. And that's just not true. The law is ambiguous. There's no case law for dealing with a pandemic. We've never, fortunately in this country, we've never had the chance to have that kind of case law develop. What this moment requires is judges to be flexible and to allow governors and judges to make these decisions. And you're seeing conservative judges just not willing to do that.
Jay, as tough as you are in your writing about them and pointing out the things that are true, I mean, I don't think you go nearly far enough. So we have to do what the law says. No, wait a minute. Conservatives generally defer to the executive branch. They certainly do at the federal level, and all of a sudden they say, oh, executive branch, Tony Evers, the governor, setting the rules. No, screw the governor. We're taking over. Okay, I believe that's called activist judges. And then they throw out the word ordinarily out of the legislation. Again, activist judges. They're monumentally full of crap. They love the undemocratic process by which Republicans get elected at a far greater rate while getting less votes. If you had any care about democracy or the rule of law, you would not love that. Anyway, last thing, because we're running very short on time here. We did mention Texas. We've talked about it a little bit more on the show. That's why I saved it a second. So real quick, how are they trying to take away abortion rights in Texas during this emergency?
Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order postponing procedures, I believe the phrase was, that are not immediately necessary or something to that effect. And the next day, the state attorney general put out a press release that said, oh, by the way, abortion is included in that. This is functionally an abortion ban in Texas. This was early last month. Federal district court said, no. This is banning abortion is not rationally related to containing the spread of coronavirus. But two Republican appeals court judges, they overturned the lower court. And they said, we have to defer in this case to the Texas governor's decision that limiting surgeries and procedures is essential. So again, the results in Wisconsin and Texas, those aren't reconcilable, right? On the one hand, you have a governor saying we need to postpone in-person voting, and a court saying that is beyond the scope of your authority. And then on the other hand, in Texas, you have a governor saying we need to functionally ban abortion in this state. And an appeals court saying, well, if that's your choice, that's not our role to second guess it.
Nonetheless, I'm glad that they have not given up this mythology that the courts are neutral, because maybe that marketing could lead them back in the right direction one day. But right now, it certainly is not where the courts are. And so Jay writes about that in the appeal. Check it out. And thank you for joining us, Jay. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.